No, we got hecklers. Welcome to the Overland Park Chamber Fireside Chat Series. I'm Kevin Hanemichael with BHC Civil Engineers and Surveyors, proud sponsor of this event, where we get an opportunity to hear from a local leader and talk a little bit about their leadership style and their perspective, and hopefully learn from them. So today, it is my pleasure to introduce Kristy Stallings. Kristy has served the city of Overland Park as deputy city manager since 2006. During her time in Overland Park, Kristy's work led the city through 3 mayors, 4 city managers, the development and redevelopment of downtown Overland Park, Hesperia, Metcalf South, and the Overland Park Convention Center, and numerous other public and private amenities that make Overland Park a great place to live. Kristy's leadership helped the city through major community planning efforts, annexations, highway expansions, ice storms, and, yes, a pandemic. Kristy grew up in Sterling, Illinois, sort of between the Quad Cities and Chicago, kind of in that area, I guess. She attended Ottawa University after high school, where she received her BA. So I was curious, how on earth did you end up in Ottawa, Kansas, coming from up by the Quad Cities? And it's actually quite the story. Ottawa is a faith-based school, which put it on her short list of options. And of course, you need to make a visit to the colleges that you're considering attending. So, over spring break, they made a trip to Kansas to visit the school. Kristy and her family are baseball fans, and as it turns out, that coincided with the 1977 Kansas City Royals home opener versus the New York Yankees. So they were able to take in that event. Also happened to be near where Kristy's dad had a friend that was in the military. So he was able to visit him. But that happened to be on the way to St. Louis. So then they were able to pick up a Cardinals game. So as Kristy puts it, it was a baseball trip with a college visit attached. Kristy got started early in city administration. While at Ottawa University, her professor, who was a council member, connected her with the newly appointed city manager. And from that introduction, she landed an internship with the city of Ottawa. So, important lesson here, relationships matter, and relationships matter a lot. From there, she stepped up to an assistant city manager position at Emporia, and then continued to climb the career ladder, getting an assistant city manager position with the city of Overland Park. When I visited with Kristy for this introduction, there were 2 themes that she kept bringing up: team and family. If you've been around Kristy at all, you know she's a baseball fanatic. But really, she likes all sorts of sports, and she likes the qualities of teamwork that go into the various sports. She carries that team theme into her personal leadership style. She views her role at the city as being part of the overall team, one part of a bigger team, to help advance the objectives of the governing body. She mentioned that her parents were servant leaders who demonstrated professional community involvement, work ethic, and put a high value on education. She says her parents really influenced her leadership style. She mentioned weekly family gatherings here at her home and spending Thanksgiving at her sister's in Overland Park. And one of her favorite places to visit? Her parents' house. Although, she did mention a trip to Barcelona, I believe, as a real favorite, so she's not boring by any means. So, let's welcome Kristy Stallings to the Overland Park Fireside Chat.
He did get a lot of your secrets.
He did get all my secrets.
So thank you, Kevin. Thank you to VHC and the whole team for sponsoring the Fireside Chat series. And he did get kind of to the heart of Kristy. So thank you all for coming. I told Kristy she's got quite a fan club. So we are excited to sit down with Kristy. It's taken me a while to get her in this hot seat. You all have no idea. She is very famous for being behind the scenes, for being calm, cool, and collected, and not revealing much. So we'll see what she reveals today. And Kristy, I do appreciate you sitting down and talking with me. So Kevin talked a lot about your path and how you got here to Overland Park. So I'd like for you to expound just a little bit more, what started with that relationship with the professor, introducing you to public service, and really what drew you more into public service. There were a lot of things that you could have done after Ottawa University, and how you got into that path and why you chose to stay in it.
So I was really looking for an internship probably a little bit truthfully to avoid another class and to get credit for doing an internship in my last year of college. And my professor was a city commissioner. Ottawa, Kansas was relatively new when I was there, within 5 years of having adopted the city manager form of government. So the city manager at the time, some of you may have known him, David Watkins, who was a longtime city administrator of Lenexa, was the newly appointed city manager and was willing to work with me on an internship. He, like I, have an MPA from KU. David also did, and that is a program and a culture that very much values internships and professional development through practice. And so he offered me the opportunity to do an internship, and I would say that the day I walked into City Hall and got my first assignment, it was love at first sight, and I never wanted to do anything else. David was instrumental in encouraging and helping me go to KU, to the MPA program, and then hired me to return to Ottawa as an assistant, where I did my first roughly 5 years of my career.
So I know that for me, and I think probably some of the other members of my team, my family has no idea what I do. You know, they think they know what I do, but I hear them trying to explain to other people, like at family picnics, what I do, and I'm thinking, is that what I do? So does your family understand what you do, and how do you try to explain it to them?
I think they do a little bit. My dad is a teacher and had lots of interaction with school boards, so I think, and has been involved in community leadership. And you know, my hometown is a very small town, so they've known council members. They knew the city manager, who was a guy I knew from Emporia, actually. And so I think they kind of understand, but many years ago they visited me and they came by my office, you know, on their way to my house. I can't remember all the details, but I was busy like on the phone or something, and they just sat there while I was doing whatever it was I was doing. And my dad said, I don't really understand what, you know. So I think they understand, but I think it's hard to understand because it's hard to explain. It's different all the time. So
Yeah, every day.
yeah.
So when I first moved here, I was told, get to know Kristy Stallings, because you're part of the secret sauce of Overland Park's success. You know, part of our stability, part of our consistency, and certainly, you know, Overland Park is known for its financial success as a community. And so I'd like for you to talk just a little bit about, you know, how Overland Park has really become known for that as a community, and why that's so important. I know we've got several former members of the governing body, you know, here in the room, and so talk a little bit about that partnership.
So I would not say that I'm secret sauce. I'm one ingredient of secret sauce. There are many, many people who work at the city, and a long legacy of elected leadership who all combined are part of that secret sauce. And I think Overland Park is a very dynamic city. It's a very attractive place to live and work and be. So we have had the benefit of long-term employees who are dedicated to the work that they do and the service that they do, and dedicated to the community, a good partnership amongst the staff and with the governing body. And I think there's certainly, you know, I've often said that Overland Park has benefited from really good opportunities, being positioned as a community to enjoy lots of the economic things that were occurring during the time since Overland Park incorporated. But I also feel very strongly that Overland Park has not squandered that by good policies, by good partnerships. There's certainly, you know, there has been a long-standing set of financial policies and practices that have been adhered to by not just the organization, but have been prioritized and valued by the governing body as well. And I think one thing that I feel very strongly about is successful organizations. I've only ever been in government, but I believe that successful organizations really are a combination of all of those things, and there is some level of financial discipline. Now, Overland Park's been in the fortunate position of being, not having to be in that position of having to decide whether to pay the light bill or feed your kids, right? I mean, we certainly don't have economic strife that many cities experience, but by the same token, we haven't squandered it. You know, there's the ability, if you have resources, to not be disciplined, and I don't think that's been the case. And you know, I'm sure everyone has their 2008 to 11 crash meltdown story, and I know at least Dave White, who was on the council at the time, that financial discipline really helped us maintain some basic levels of services while we were really managing through unprecedented financial challenges for the city. But through that system that has long been adhered to by the organization and the governing body, I think that has been a critical piece of the financial success of the city. And quite frankly, the actions of every employee of the city in terms of how they carry out their duties, how they utilize resources of the city, are all part of the city's financial success.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've been in Overland Park for a long time, but you also worked in 2 other cities before you came here. So if you take all of that tenure, you've worked with a lot of different elected officials. And so when you reflect back on that, what are the basic characteristics that you would say are really required for or reflective of the most effective public officials in terms of determining the best strategic direction for a community?
I would guess it's similar to any business that anyone runs, and that's an individual's willingness to be open to other ideas and take in information and allow their views to be informed by information and other people's perspectives, and be willing to compromise. And particularly, I think in government, if you own your own business, at some point you can take in information and then you decide. I think in government, that's really just not what it is. No one's really in charge. The results are based on collaboration and compromise in terms of setting a direction.
So when you think about Overland Park when you first got here, kind of compare and contrast, you know, we've got, you know, some people in the room, you know, who've been here for that entire duration, and then we've got others, you know, who are a lot newer to Overland Park, and what we see here is what they've always known. So talk a little bit about, you know, what the community was like in terms of size, and then, you know, what the city was like as well, budget and amount of resources, and kind of what you've experienced in terms of growth and change.
So when I came to Overland Park in 1989, I think the population was a little over 89,000. Now we're 200, a little bit over 200. I remember coming to look for an apartment and have lunch with the city manager who hired me before I came and officially started with the city, and I drove around a little bit and I needed gas, and there was at 135th, which was back then K10, and 69 Highway, there was one gas station on the southwest corner, and that was it. And it was a 2-lane road, right? So 119th was just developing at that time, and so from that standpoint, Overland Park has experienced a great deal of growth, a great deal of difference. You know, Corporate Woods was primarily the office park. There was still development along College Boulevard of various office buildings. The Sprint campus didn't exist. Deer Creek, no, not Deer Creek, South Creek, one of those creeks. South Creek didn't exist. So I've had the opportunity to really be around during all that development and all those city council meetings where those things were debated. So
Yeah,
Did that?
we added up all those hours of city council meetings for each of those developments.
Yeah. Every now and then I try to count council meetings and hours, and I'm pretty sure it's been at least a year of my life during my whole career.
I think that's conservative.
During my whole
Maybe
career.
we wouldn't want to do that. So let's kind of go back and talk about mentors. You can be specific or you can be general about the people who have helped form the Kristy that you are today, and maybe the lessons that you learned from them that are most valuable to you.
Well, I think I've been really fortunate in my life. I feel like I've had a very charmed life with excellent mentors, guiders, mentor in the specific sense of here's the coaching you need for your career. I think probably the closest thing I had to that was David Watkins. But certainly throughout my life, starting with my very first job, I used to sell donuts at McCaslin's Bakery when I was in high school. And that, Ken McCaslin, who owned that business, he and his wife, I learned a lot of things about business, about customer service, about how to treat people from him. Certainly teachers, adults in my church community when I was growing up. Certainly not just bosses, Don Pipe certainly, longtime city manager of Overland Park, but also colleagues. There's so many people that you can learn various things from that I think I've benefited from all of those relationships.
So when you were growing up, we've talked about the turning point in college when you kind of made this choice of where you were going to go. But prior to that, what did you see yourself doing?
Well, I grew up in sort of that unique time when opportunities were really just opening up for women, right? So I was in high school when women were burning their bras, and I didn't really understand it so much, right? But I certainly benefited from those things. So I think I didn't want to be a teacher. My parents were teachers, so God forbid that you would do what your parents did, right? But I had older family friends. One of the daughters was a nurse, so I thought I would be a nurse. Right up until I was a junior in high school in biology class and nearly passed out when we were just pricking our fingers for blood to do that experiment you do, and then I had sort of a crisis about what I was going to do. About the same time I was thinking about where I was going to go to college, and I think I went to college without knowing for sure, but thinking that maybe I wanted to do some kind of nonprofit work. I didn't really know. I have to say I honestly did not know until I walked into Ottawa City Hall. It's like, this is it.
This is it.
I think I was 20.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, good thing you had that finger prick early.
Yeah, exactly. Better to do it that
before the classes started.
Yeah, better that than
Before
exactly.
the classes.
After the tuition check had been cashed. Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the things that I think many people in the room who know you are really known for your calm and cool demeanor. Even in meetings that get a little hot, sometimes hostile, very opinionated. And so, talk a little bit about, has that always been part of who you are, or have you really cultivated that, over time, as, part of who you need to be as city staff, to make sure that you're setting a good example and not reacting to all the chaos that's happening in a meeting?
My husband would say stoicism probably is a genetic thing. Sometimes he really wants me to have a reaction to something and I don't.
Is that from your mom or your dad?
I think probably my father's side and my grandmother, whom I'm a lot alike. But I think more importantly, the role of city management is to make sure the governing body has all the information, as much of all of the information as you can assemble in a way that is manageable to help that body make decisions. And I know people kind of don't believe it, but I don't really have a vested opinion about how things should go. I will be opinionated and fierce about pursuing something if that's the direction from the majority of the governing body. But in terms of me caring, does anybody remember that insurance commercial from, I don't know, a decade ago? I care, but I don't care, right? I care about the outcome, but I don't care. Like, it's either way, because that's the system, and that's what the process is for the governing body to come to a collective decision, whether it's by compromise or whether it's just with 7 votes.
So as a follow-up, as I reflect back on, I'm not, I've only, for a couple of years, I worked in City Hall, and way back in the beginning of my career. But as someone who is in City Hall a lot, my observation is that meetings have become much more cantankerous in this air of increased partisanship and a lot more difficulty in having civil conversations when there is disagreement in public. Are you concerned that that is going to be discouraging to young professionals going into public service? And so I'd like to comment on that. And if so, what's your advice to the people who turn to you for advice, the people that you're a mentor to?
Well, I guess one of the benefits of longevity is also perspective that this isn't the only time period that there have been divisions, right? Even in the community, amongst the governing body. So I'm not overly concerned about that, because I think that's reflective of really what's going on at all levels of our society, right? There's lots of change. Certainly the pace of technology, the influence of social media, the difference in ways people get their information, right? I love a newspaper, right? But they don't really exist in that same way anymore. So I think from the standpoint of local government professionals, we have to respond to that and figure out what does that mean and how we navigate the world, the hand we're dealt. And again, I guess the thing that I dislike is personalization, right? I don't like your point of view doesn't mean that you're a terrible person or that you're awful. It means we have a difference. And to me, the thing that really needs to be a focus is, what are we going to do about that? I don't know. But I don't think differences are bad, because they mean something. But there's something there that people are concerned about that are there. I don't know how you put that into something productive. I'm not sure. I do believe, and the former council members in the room are going to roll their eyes at this, but I do believe that the only thing that will possibly help that is if we have a process where people feel they can be heard, right? And sometimes you have your say and you don't get your way, or you don't get all of your way, but that's really what being part of a community is about. That's what being part of any kind of collective group is about. Your family, a club, your church, your whatever, is the successful ones compromise, right? Have a way of collaborating and coming to some agreement about the direction based on differing views.
Right.
So
Discussing the thing and
right.
not making it personal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think each individual has to, bring that perspective. And frankly, that may not be what we're going to be experiencing for a while. Just whatever phase this time represents, that just may not be, there's not a magic potion to make that go away. We just have, I think, from the standpoint of leadership in local government, we just have to keep doing our job. We just have to keep focusing on that. It creates additional needs for our senior management to help our organization understand that, because, you know, certainly in this employment environment, if I can work in a place where people aren't fighting or in a place where people are fighting, you know, maybe that will influence my decision. And so I think there's a role for local government leaders to help people understand that's not really about us. Here's the things we, you know, to bridge that gap, or that communication, or help people understand that, so.
Absolutely. Well, let's switch gears. Talk about baseball. You have a very unique way that you like to experience baseball. So share a little bit about that.
So my father grew up in Southern Illinois when the only baseball team west of the Mississippi was the St. Louis Cardinals, just barely west of the Mississippi. And so he loved baseball. He loved sports, and that's just something that was just the entertainment and the thing that we did. It was always a big deal to go see a baseball game every summer when we visited grandparents. I do like to tease him that my college visit was really a ruse for a baseball trip, and he doesn't deny it. So, you know, but I always, it's probably a little bit of an exaggeration, but when I could hold a pencil, write numbers, he taught me to keep score on a scorecard. And so I have my own book that I take to games with me. Including the 2014 wild card game, I have a full scorecard for that game. I did not leave. So it's just a way to stay in the game. And for a few years, my husband and I had season tickets, you know, like one of those 20 game packs. And there was a group of men who were, you know, a group of friends that had tickets right by us on the same rotation. And one of the years they had the brand new scoreboard, right? And so they were kind of teasing me, oh, you don't need that scorecard anymore. You know, you don't need that. You got the big Jumbotron, you don't need that. And then throughout the game, they'd be like, how many times has he struck out? And then, how many times has he had a first pitch swing, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you should just look at the scoreboard. So it's a way that I keep my head in the game. It's sort of a connection to my childhood, and I still feel excited when I go to a baseball game, just like I did when I was a kid. Even now I can go as many times as I want, right? So anyway, it's just a way to, there's nothing better to me in the summertime than leaving the office and going out on a nice summer night and watching a baseball game. It's just, I don't do it enough, but it's a pretty good thing to do.
So what else do you do in your spare time?
I work a lot. I work a lot. I like to read. You know, before COVID, my husband and I like to travel. We went to Barcelona right before that. We do a lot with our family. Both his daughter and son live here. We have 2 grandsons, 17 months and 17 years old. We do a lot of things with our family. They come for dinner once a week, and we have a good opportunity to be with them a lot. So between that and work and just all the things you do, I have a great group of friends. I think that's another important part of what has helped me in my career, is having that solid group of girlfriends that are just, you know, pressure relievers, that people you can do stuff with. So
When you think back on all the projects and programs that you've worked on in the time that you've been here in Overland Park, what are really those milestone or signature projects, you know, that really stand out in your mind as the ones that you're really proud of?
Well, I would say probably the 2 come to mind. And one is when I came to Overland Park, the city council, the chamber had a goal of building a convention center complex. And that really, I've worked with that since the day I walked in the door. It was maybe a 4-year-old dream when I got here. And so navigating that has been very rewarding, challenging, but rewarding. I think it's a great amenity for the community and for Johnson County. And I think the other is sort of a few decades later, the next kind of broad goal or vision for the community is Vision Metcalf. And I think I'm very proud to have been involved in the redevelopment of downtown Overland Park. I think, I recall when I first came here, downtown Overland Park still, had retail businesses, and that they were gradually closing, and there was a lot of commentary, a lot of efforts on the part of the city, a lot of groups interested in what can we do about downtown Overland Park. And I think, the combination of Vision Metcalf has resulted in a pretty dynamic place that, really was a result of a lot of incremental decisions and pursuit of that vision over many years.
So as a follow-up to that, we're just now getting into the new comprehensive plan.
Right.
That will be kind of the next big thing. What are your hopes for that, or what are you most looking forward to as a result of the comp plan?
I don't know that I have the right picture of even what that might be. And I guess what I would say is, I think, again, that to me, the most important part of the comprehensive plan is that process of the engagement, of people plugging in and saying what's important to them about where they live and the kinds of things they want to see. Because it does provide direction and information to the city in all of the things we do in terms of what's important. I think I don't know what the right, there's not a right answer.
Right.
I don't know, but I trust the process will have an outcome that guides us. And again, Vision Metcalf was sort of a mini version of that, right?
Right.
If you look at that report, does it have all these pictures that don't exist? Of course. But does it have concepts that we have been able to achieve in an incremental basis? Absolutely. And I think that's really what a comprehensive plan is. But I would encourage anyone who hasn't plugged into that process to do so, because it is a very important thing, and it's going to be a very important foundation for the next stage of Overland Park. It's life.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a mulligan moment at some point in your career that you'd like to go back and revisit and maybe take a different path?
No. I honestly, there's not. I can't think of any. I mean, sure, like little things that I've done, regrets, or I would have done that differently. But I can't think of any choice or decision that I made in my career that I am not happy with, that I wouldn't go back and do again.
It's a great place to be.
I'm charmed. I've had, from the day I was born, I lucked out in the family lottery, I lucked out in the education lottery, I lucked out in the, time that I was born and opportunities. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, that's a great thing to be able to say. You referenced earlier, you talked a little bit about the time that you were born in and when you were in college, and that was kind of the beginning of the women's movement and opportunities for more women. You still were in a very male-dominated field, and still are to a certain extent. So talk a little bit about how you navigated that, as a young woman, and advice that you would have, still for women who are getting into the field of public service.
Well, I will again say part of the charm of my life is that I don't feel I ever really experienced people suggesting that I couldn't do things because I was a female, right?
Might have been that baseball scoring.
Well, it could be that I just didn't. I mean, there probably are those who would say I was stubborn and bullheaded enough that I didn't acknowledge it, or accept it, right? I think some of it is because I worked hard. But, you know, look, I was, I think, 24 years old when David Watkins came to be the city administrator in Lenexa. I don't even know what they were thinking, but the city commission in Ottawa, Kansas appointed me to be the interim city manager for, you know, I can't remember how many months I did that, 5 months. And it's like, I look back on that now and I think, what were those people thinking? But they were an excellent group of city commissioners, and we had a great partnership and relationship, and that was an excellent opportunity for me. I learned a lot from that experience. And so I don't think that I have much to say other than that, really.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about changing administrations. So, you know, 3 different cities, and then, of course, numerous changes of administration, whether it's mayors or city managers, and, you know, what that meant in terms of your leadership style. You know, how has that adapted or not adapted, you know, through the years?
So, I think it's important, when I think about leadership, I think you don't have to be the penultimate boss of something to be a leader, because leadership is about more qualities than just formal authority. And I've always viewed my responsibility, and this was really shaped by my 24-year-old city manager experience, that city managers don't know everything, right? They need information, and they need honest information from their team to be able to make decisions, and then they need support, right? So I would guess that all of the city managers I've worked with have at one point or another thought, I wish she would leave here and not tell me her opinion anymore. But by the same token, appreciated it, right? And the other thing I've always felt very strongly about is, in that room, I will tell you what I think all day long, and I will argue, if that's the relationship, I will argue with you about it, but the moment I leave there, whatever that decision is, it's like it was my idea, right? So I think in any environment where you're working with different people, you adapt your style to what works for that person to support that person, right? So with each manager, and certainly as I've progressed in my career from being, you know, a young person to being an experienced person, a seasoned person, yeah. You know, those are the things that you bring and share with the city manager or the new elected officials or the new mayor, in terms of a partnership, and be responsive to helping them achieve their goals. I mean, I really have always viewed my role as being a person who I'm going to help get stuff done based on what the direction is. I'll tell you if I have an opinion about some pieces of that direction or how to get there, but that's my role. That's how I view my career.
What do you think the next big opportunities are for Overland Park?
So I'm the same age as Overland Park, and I think as Overland Park is now in its 60s, there are different things that, you know, it's not unlike when you're 30, you think about different things than when you're in your 60s. And, you know, I think Overland Park, there's lots of things we need to do to take care of what exists. There's lots of, you know, there's changing demographics, there's new ideas about what our community should be through the comprehensive plan. So I think all of those things are going to be, I think, you know, what's the future of the economy and the workforce, and, you know, our bread and butter, which has been services economy and offices, what is that going to look like in the future, and how do we respond to that? What are we going to do about, housing issues, and which is, a countywide topic. So, but again, I don't really have a crystal ball or know, and I don't even really think of myself as the person who's thinking about that, right? It's more, how do we be aware of and take advantage of opportunities in a collaborative way as things unfold?
Right. Well, you certainly are the person who does that. You help facilitate that. You're a great collaborator, and when those opportunities come to the city, you're one who helps facilitate that process along the way and helps make things possible. And I know that you're never in it for the recognition. You are absolutely known for not speaking unless you have something really important to say, and then everyone listens. I think that certainly is the reputation that you have, and because you don't seek recognition, you're probably going to hate this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you think back on your time here, what do you hope your legacy will be? When people think, that Kristy Stallings, this is what she did for the city of Overland Park.
Wow, that's a really hard question.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah.
I saved it for last.
Okay, good.
I kind of warmed you up.
Okay. I guess I hope, as having set an example for working, being dedicated to the city, to the mission, to supporting the governing, being part of the team that supports the governing body, that digs down to the details so people will understand, and that we've uncovered all the rocks. I guess that's really what I value and what I hope people see is valuable in the work that I do and have done for Overland Park.
Well,
It's kind of boring. That's really boring, right? But
well, details are boring.
yeah, but they matter.
Until they're not.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Until you got a big old mess.
Exactly. But we depend on people like you to make sure that the details are covered.
Well, and I think, so, there's, in city management, there's this interesting dichotomy where when you're working with elected officials are about the passion and the vision and the feelings about being in a community, and as administrators or as city management, local government administrators, we have to be about the details and the information and the data that helps inform how those things come together to make decisions, with lots of different viewpoints about how much, everybody makes decisions differently, right? I may make a decision, give me the spreadsheet. You may make a decision based on how you feel about something. And all of that has to be pulled together in a way to help decisions be made in the community. Some of them are easier, right? You're going to fix a road, here's a contract, you're buying some, asphalt and some concrete, and you're done. But the passion comes in, which road, where, when, and so that's really the more role, I think, that that the staff has in terms of helping the governing body make those choices and understand that information.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as taxpayers and everyone in this room, many of them play two roles. They're residents, and so they pay personally, but they're
Right.
business owners and managers, and so they're paying twice. And so that is an important investment, and they absolutely depend on the details, taking care of the investment that they've made, but they care about, the emotion, or what I would call the strategic vision
Right.
of making sure that the community continues to grow and be strong and have the very best quality of life. And the two things have to work together.
And expecting that to be not messy or easy is not realistic, because it's not.
Well, it has to be a community conversation.
Right, absolutely.
And so I want to thank you.
Process matters.
Process does matter. And just as we all have processes in our own organizations and in our own organizations, whether we like it or not, it is messy, and it depends on the details, and it depends on the larger strategic process at the same time.
But the fun thing for us is we get to have it live streamed.
Well, absolutely. And anybody can come in and make a comment about it. And for the rest of us, not everybody necessarily comes in and comments about what they think about how we're doing it. And so on behalf of everyone, not just the people who are here in your fan club coming to hear you talk, I just want to thank you for all the work that you do, because I know that from the staff's perspective, most Monday and Wednesday nights, people don't come just to say thank you. They come to say a lot of other things. But I think what they forget is thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you have done. Thank you for your leadership. And I really appreciate that you finally did decide to sit down and have this conversation so that people could learn just a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
So thank you. Good night.